listening to Grace, Geltman, and Weld on the Hammer Factor. Take it away, boys.
Like QAnon? Are you familiar with QAnon? Nice.
That's the joke. I'm glad you picked up on that, Weld.
All right, welcome to Hammer Factor 61, the New Year edition.
When are we going to have like a special paid subscriber guest list who can listen to the pre-show?
Oh God, dude.
I get nervous every time. Like Grace just picks the most incriminating moment. And you're like, "Welcome to episode." And it's like, "Oh God, what did I just say?"
Yeah, I usually sit around and wait for that to happen, but it makes for good theater. But you're right. We should do that. But our Patreon page or whatever where they get the pre-show, it's gonna have to be like Snapchat. Once they hear it, it's gone. It just doesn't exist.
We can deny everything.
Exactly. Killer show. Let me introduce my co-host here. My name is John Grace, producer here at the Hammer Factor, and I'd like to introduce Louis Geltman, policy director for the Outdoor Alliance, and John Weld, co-owner of Immersion Research. It's 2019. It's our first show of the year, and we have a top of the show sponsor. So I'm going to get right into it, boys, before we get into the banter. I'd like to thank the Extreme Sports Festival in Voss, Norway, for coming on 23rd to the 30th of June 2019. Extreme Sport Vekko. It's in Norway, and I've gathered a few little interesting facts here about Norway. Have either of you guys ever paddled in Norway?
I haven't. I'd like to.
Okay. Well, if you go to the website, extremesportvekko.com/hammerfactor, they have our own landing page for anybody from the States who wants to come over to Voss and check everything out. It is a bomber place to go kayaking when the season's going good. And here's a few little facts that I pulled together. Voss has more than 10 rivers with more than 20 sections, not more than 45 minutes from town. Depending on water levels, there's plenty of kayaking, grades 2, 3, 4, and 5. Norway is not expensive, as it once was. The kroner has dropped in its value by 30% in the past few years. In Norway, you have the right to roam. I thought this was really cool, and we took advantage of this when we were there. The right to roam. You can camp more or less anywhere you want. You pull your car off and just go out in any field and camp. Extreme Sport Vekko is 21 years old, and they have everything from mountain biking to bouldering to longboarding, paragliding, base jumping, skydiving. It is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, extreme sport festivals in the world. You should check it out. If you're ever considering go to Norway, go to extremesportvekko.com/hammerfactor. Big thanks to those guys.
Man, that's cool. It's a pretty big sponsor, I feel like.
Yeah, dude. They reached out to us, and if you would like to sponsor the Hammer Factor, this is your most bang for your buck in whitewater advertising, hands down guaranteed. So reach out, and we can get you over a media kit. We have a new sponsorship level on there, the policy update. So if you want to sponsor the policy update, it's a 15-second mention, and it puts some money in Lewis's pocket because he is a lawyer, and
holy shit,
his time is valuable. So we'll see if anybody picks up on the Lewis segment sponsorship. I'm not sure what I called it.
Damn.
So,
thanks, Grace.
Yeah, man, we'll see what we can do. All right, man, we got a killer show lined up, guys. We got Shane Benedict from Liquid Logic Kayaks coming on to answer some questions that we've got about boats breaking. We have Ryan Bailey, editor of Banks Mag. If you don't know what Banks Mag is, well, you'll find out here a little later in the show.
I'm so excited to have Bailey on. I feel like he's been somebody I've wanted to get on the podcast for a long time, and Banks Mag is just like the greatest thing in kayak media ever. And if we can capture the tiniest bit of that energy on the Hammer Factor, I would be proud of it.
Yeah, we're gonna
Banks Mag is the shit.
Oh man, we got tons of good listener mail. We've got a big show lined up. But first thing I want to do is make an apology here on the Hammer Factor. So, man, and this is a sincere apology. So, Michael Gallimore writes in, he says, 2 shows in 2 weeks, I love it. However, Grace, are we really using the R word with a negative connotation? You are smarter and more creative than that. This may be the most inclusive podcast in adventure sports, so we'll forgive you. Keep up the great work, boys. So I would like to apologize for saying the R word. I mean, I say it all the time, and it's something I need to work on. I'm going to try and be better. I don't mean it to be offensive. It's just something you can't say. Lewis called me out on the show, and I was like, nobody's going to care, and we got 3 or 4 messages like that next day. So anyway, I'm going to start out with an apology.
It's actually the opening clip of the episode is me telling you not to do that.
So anyway, we've moved on from that. Let me quit blabbing here and throw it over to you, Lewis. We got Zinke out. It took us some time, but we got him out. We've got a new guy in. The government shut down. What are we looking at as far as policy? What topics do you have for us?
Yeah, Zinke's out. I guess we saw that coming for quite a while now. It's it's like sometimes I think, and this is like sort of a cynical take, but it's almost like the only real sin in American political life is just like not being sophisticated enough with your corruption, right? It's like sometimes I think about like, have you guys ever seen those, like, are you guys familiar with the marshmallow test?
No.
It's like this apparently this is like this thing that they do with children, and this is like the ~1 predictor of your eventual success in life. And it's like they give these kids a marshmallow, and they're like, if you can wait 10 minutes to eat this marshmallow, we'll give you like 10 marshmallows. And so the kid has to like sit and watch the marshmallow for 10 minutes without eating it and wait. And it's like your ability to like delay gratification basically is like the ultimate predictor of your success in life. And like Zinke basically failed the marshmallow test. It was like all he had to do was to be like, like Gail Norton, who was one of Bush's interior secretaries, who as soon as she left, she's at DOI working on this agenda on behalf of the fossil fuel energy industry. And, as soon as she leaves, she literally goes and works for Royal Dutch Shell. And like, all you have to do is just, wait to get paid out by the fossil fuel energy industry until you're out of office. And Zinke just like could not do that. He had to use marshmallow now and got into all these like shady real estate development deals with like the CEO of Halliburton or whatever up in Whitefish, and just working on behalf of like these like casino magnates. And it's like he's just like too dumb to like keep his corruption between the like minimal constability, And so Zinke's out, and now there's the acting Secretary of Interior is this guy named David Bernhardt, who is like the platonic ideal of the swamp creature. Like he worked at DOI under Bush. He, was like a corporate lobbyist for I want to say one of the big irrigation districts in California that's like getting all this like subsidized federal water and fighting against the Endangered Species Act and like God knows what other clients. Apparently his list of conflicts of interest is so long that he literally carries around an index card so that he can remember which of all of these giant like corporate conglomerates he's conflicted out from working on. But I assure you that is not stopping him from working on behalf of extractive industry and, whoever else. So Bernhardt's in there in acting capacity right now. It sounds like the short list for, a new Interior Secretary when and if Trump ever gets around to nominating one is like Bernhardt. I've heard Rob Bishop's name has been floated now, the former chair of the House Natural Resources Committee, now ranking member from Utah. I've heard Dean Heller's name floated, who is a former senator from Nevada.
I get the sense that Trump's not in any hurry to fill any position. He's okay just letting things kind of roll.
Isn't his entire cabinet right now with temporary people?
I mean, not entirely, but there's an inordinate number of people in acting capacities for sure. I mean, the AG confirmation is going on this week. What's his name? Wheeler, the acting EPA administrator, is going through confirmation hearings this week. Like Bernhardt would be like a very similar transition to what you got from Pruitt to Wheeler, which is, Pruitt was somebody who was just like ostentatiously corrupt, and Wheeler is, working on the exact same agenda, but is just like a much savvier operator. And I think that's sort of what we would get with Bernhardt, is somebody who, I mean, Zinke wants to let, David Bernhardt's been the kind of person who's been running the show at DOI all this time regardless, and Zinke's out dressed up in a Boy Scout uniform and talking about Teddy Roosevelt while David Bernhardt does the work. And, now Bernhardt's going to assume the title or whatever, potentially, but it's the same deal. So, I don't know. Trails to Ryan Zinke. We've had a lot of fun at your expense.
What about this? We got this email from Sam Wells. Do we want to discuss that, or do we want to wait till we get Ryan on? I thought this was pretty interesting about the Stibnite mine in the headwaters of the South Fork of the Salmon.
Yeah, let's talk about it with Bailey.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to jump out of this, but I think is there anything else you'd like to add, really quick, Lewis?
Not much, man. I mean, I guess the last time we recorded, we were sort of finagling around trying to get this public lands bill passed at the end of the last Congress, and our hope was that it was going to get attached to government spending bill that ended up not getting passed at all. So we were talking about the vehicle, and
yeah. And so what happened?
The vehicle never left. So we
So when the government starts back up, hopefully, if it does, are all those things attached to it? Are the bills laying there, or do they have to go back and renegotiate the bills before they get appropriated?
So the appropriation stuff, I think, will, that'll pass either the appropriations bills from the last Congress or probably more likely a CR to reopen the government. But the public lands bills, that's a separate process. That was something that they wanted to attach, and it got held up at the last minute from getting a vote by Michael Lee from Utah.
That's right.
And so there was a commitment from Senate leadership to have fuller time for this package of public lands bills. It was reintroduced by Murkowski and Cantwell maybe a week ago. And there's a process whereby they can just move the entire package through committee directly to the floor, but it's not exactly clear on how that's going to go on the floor and what the amendment process is going to look like for that. Like, I think Mike Lee will lose the ability. I guess my parliamentary procedure is a little shaky, but I think he loses the ability to block it single-handedly. But there will be some sort of amendment process, most likely, by which he could, get some votes to attach things to the package that would sink it. And if he gets enough of his colleagues to go along with some of these things, like, blocking the use of the Antiquities Act in Utah, that would kill the package. So I think everything's in a little bit of a holding pattern right now until the government reopens. But our hope is that there's going to be some more chances to try and move this big set of public lands protections relatively early this year.
Well, thank you for that, Lewis.
Yeah, man, I'm sorry. I feel like I got a little in the weeds, but
it's all right. I like the weeds. Man, paddle offset. This thing just won't go away. We've discussed it. We're having to officially ban people from the show now for their comments on this. It's getting to be a big deal. So I have a resolution here. Okay. We're not going to we're going to get deep into paddle offset or answer all of these listener mails. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 listeners.
And that's after we threw out the repetitive ones. The ones who are asking the same things over and over.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go clip my toenails, and I'll come back when you guys are done talking about this.
But we got to dive into this, and we're gonna put together some sort of white paper on paddle offset, the definitive resource. We're gonna publish it. We're going to sign off of it, and then we don't have to, discuss it one more time, and then we don't have to talk about it anymore.
I want to point out that this whole thing started almost on the very first episode of Hammer Factor, where I started calling out an unnamed paddle sports rep who has the power to probably have me killed, so I'm not going to mention his name. for selling 0-degree offset paddles to people, and I saw them at swimming pools paddling around, beginner paddlers with no control hand, and they're just cocking their wrist around, and it was doing them all sorts of disservice. That was the start of all of this. And people who had higher offset paddles did not have that problem.
They should not sell 0-degree offsets except by special order. It's like, if you really know that that's what you want, and that's, you know, if you want to be stupid, who are you to stop?
We had some guy write in who has a bench shaft 0-degree paddle.
A bench shaft 0-degree. Just think about that.
You're behind the counter. It's like, that's what it should be with the 0-degree offset. Like, you should have to know and ask for it. Like, that should not just be available for somebody to like stumble upon and pick up unaware of the harm they're inflicting upon themselves.
Okay, let's get into a couple of these. Anyway, it's got ridiculous.
Can we start with the guy with his daughter paddling?
This is a good one.
Yeah, let me
Because
pull this.
this actually resonates for me because I'm a left-hand control paddler, and I need to set this young girl straight on this issue once and for all.
All right. Should I read this entire one, because it's pretty good? I'm going to read this one. Dear Hammer Factor, as the open boater father of an 11-year-old kayaker, I need advice on paddle length and offset. T-grip paddles, I understand, at 4 feet, 2.5 inches, and 56 pounds. Her current paddle length is 46 inches, with the blade at 0-degree offset to the T-grip. As she is left-handed and I paddle righty, I have mandated that in a canoe she paddles lefty, thus allowing me to easily harness her energy in a tandem canoe. Smart dad. My dilemma is this. She currently uses a 148 centimeter left-hand control 60-degree offset paddle. This choice of paddle control, hand, and offset is creating problems in our relationship, as she wants a new paddle and I'm faced with the expense of custom sourcing a paddle with these bizarre specifications. I've tried to persuade her that a more conventional offset, and better yet, one in right-hand control, would save old dad many greenbacks, but she is not convinced. She has agreed the Hammer Factor hosts are the definitive experts on all things related to paddle offsets and will accept your ruling as final, as most people should. I added that part myself. Help me out there, you guys. Tell her that Dad is right and that a 30-degree offset right-hand control paddle will be just the thing she needs to take the next step as a kayaker. Better yet, tell her that kayaks are so last year and the future is canoeing. Thanks, guys. I know that you will do the right thing and help a guy out. Mr. Weld?
Well, let's just step right over the canoeing comment, because I don't think we need to discuss that. But, and I mentioned this before on the show, but I'm a left-hand control paddler, right? And the reason for that is I learned at Valley Mill, which had a whole bunch of flat bladed had a bunch of flat 90-degree paddles. When I mean flat, they had no spoon to it, just a flat blade, and they were 90 degrees. So you could paddle left-hand control or right-hand control. And there are dozens of us over the years that learned to paddle with those paddles that were right-handed, then were all left-hand control. And years and years and years ago, I read, and if you guys are old-timers, remember this, River Runner magazine. A guy in River Runner magazine actually pointed out this phenomena, because back then, flat 90-degree paddles weren't super uncommon. And then Kara once mentioned that the entire Czechoslovakian slalom team was left-hand control, pretty much for the same reason, because they're like the mid-'80s communist era Czech slalom team was all paddling 90-degree flat bladed paddles, right? So the implication here is that if you're right-handed, given the neutral paddle, you're going to go left-hand control, right? So first of all, that would suggest that as a left-handler, she's probably even more disposed to using a right-hand control paddle than a right-handed person. That's A. B, getting a left-hand control paddle, being a left-hand control paddler sucks. It just sucks, because you have to order your paddles. They don't stack right with anybody else's. If you break a paddle and you break apart on the river, it's almost always only set for right-hand control paddle. She's 11. She has a very plastic brain. Fix this problem now before it becomes so ingrained like me that you cannot change it. And I've tried over the years to go right-hand control, and I can't. And I regret it. This is words of wisdom.
There you go. That was a great answer. That was very good.
Yeah. I guess
my 10-year-old uses a 60-degree offset, and he loves it.
Yeah, I guess I would say if you want to order a paddle, you can order paddles from galsportusa.com, and you can get any offset you want, any length you want, and they're quite reasonably priced.
But that's not going to help you break your paddle.
Yeah,
but I mean, right?
Get
I'm saying,
3. If you go there, get 3.
For getting
So
custom paddles, I mean, I think using a 60-degree offset is a good decision, and I don't know if 11 is too old to switch offset or to switch control hands or not. That's a tough one. I mean, I guess it depends how much he's been paddling. I mean, I would hate to subject some poor girl who has a natural feel for doing something to like trying to break that. But if it's not too late, if she's only paddled a small amount of time, try and get her to switch. But I don't know. I guess I'm more. I would hate to like subject somebody to using the non-natural control hand because that sounds awful.
But like, she's going to be subjected to getting made fun of every time they load paddles on the car. Every time. I mean, it's it's.
It also looks.
I mean, the practical thing is, once again, when you break a paddle, and everyone has break aparts, but they're drilled out for righties only. That's what you got.
You have to have your own down forever.
And it sucks.
Have you ever noticed that it just like totally fucks with me when I'm watching video of somebody paddling left-hand control? It's like it like makes them look like something just looks wrong. It's like your brain recoils. Like I was watching this like little like YouTube or Instagram video of Goga, Igor Voskovonikov or whatever, the Russian guy the other day on the Instagrams, and it's like he's just like he's such a sick paddler and he's just like crushing it, and you're just like watching him, and there's just something that like doesn't. You're just like left hand control. It's like your brain kind of like.
Yeah.
It's like watching a basketball player shoot free throws left-handed.
I bet you $1,000 he started paddling lefty for the same reason.
I'd always heard that in Eastern Europe they actually encouraged right-handed paddlers to paddle left-hand control because that's the hand that you're opening and closing with, and so that makes more sense somehow that your strong hand is the one that you're opening and closing with all the time.
Okay, we got to move on.
Yeah.
Ty Sco. So the answer is definitively get her to switch. Are we saying that? Are we going with that?
Go righty if you can. Start at 45 degrees. It's going to go bigger from there. I know. Everyone's going to write in and start screaming and yelling about 0-degree offsets for kids. But,
don't get a 30. Don't get her a 30. Go 45 or 60 or 65.
Okay, this comes at us from Ty Sco. Ty, I'm just going to summarize this email. Ty paddles a 202 Shogun 60-degree offset workhorse of the paddling world.
Indeed.
He also agrees that we need to ban Fred because he's quitting kayaking to pursue a career in SUP. But Fred bought a whitewater journal, so he's not banned anymore. So
I'll point out Fred asked me to mention. He won't write me. He does write me, but I won't write back because I think it's sort of a form of collusion. So he writes people that work for me and asks them to ask me things. But he wants me to tell people that CKS Main Street is hiring this summer. So if you want a job in paddle sports and you want to live in basically what amounts to a paddle sports cult in Buena Vista, then this might be an opportunity for you to do that.
It's kind of shaping up to be a decent snow year out there too, eh?
Yeah.
Okay, so Ty's point. The point of Ty's thing. Sorry to break you guys off here. We are running way behind time. The point of Ty's comment here is small diameter shaft or standard diameter shaft. What are you guys' thoughts on the thickness of paddle shafts? Do you guys paddle
I think there's
with
something
a standard?
to it, but I don't know. I don't have small hands, so I don't really know what.
Yeah, I've always used a normal one. I mean, it seems like
That
a
seems
bigger
obvious.
diameter, you're always going to get.
I lost you there for a second, Lewis. What was that?
There you go.
No? Oh, I was just saying, I feel like you're always going to get more stiffness for the same weight with a larger diameter. So don't use a small shaft unless you really feel like you have to.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me, but I don't have much experience with it. I feel like I need to grab a small shaft paddle and use it for a while, but I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that one personally. I think that to me the bigger shaft is stronger, and that means a lot when you're running hard whitewater. So that would kind of be my summary on that. Whew. Priscilla Macy. Priscilla Macy writes a long email coming in, very, very well put together email, many different points, questions. Maybe we'll just publish this in the show notes or whatnot. But unfortunately, we're just going to have to ban Priscilla from the show. So,
I think that's right. I think at this point she's banned.
Yeah. So she's trying. The point of it is she's making arguments for 0-degree offset that are so unfounded that we can't even bring them on the show to discuss them.
It's spreading conspiracy theories.
Yeah, exactly. It's way beyond fake news. So anyway, Priscilla, you're banned for a while. Here we go. Kevin hates on Lewis and paddle offset. This is a good one. Kevin Cripps lays into Lewis for being such an elitist about posting pictures on the Little White. Basically, he calls it sheer hyperbole.
I can't wait till you're out here and you see there are literally like spirit paparazzi now. Like you go down there and there are hipsters with cameras just like set up waiting for kayakers. Like there was like the last time I was down there was a lady who's like is there somewhere I can look at the message board and find out when the kayakers are going to be coming down here so I can take their picture? I've walked through there and had people ask if Rush and Rafa are coming today. Like it is real.
Are you serious?
I don't think.
Dead serious. I'm not making that up.
we got a lot of people writing in about social media, and I think the core problem is that none of us disagree that sharing your experiences on the river with other paddlers and talking about what you did on the river and places you've gone with other paddlers is not a bad thing. It has a lot of great things about it. The problem is that the social media in recent years has made this so abundantly easy that it's getting out of control, right? There used to be some friction to this information. You know, years ago you had to go to a chat board or get a guidebook or talk to some people, and that sort of organically kept things under control. But with social media, it just moves out of control into areas where with unintended consequences, right? I mean, I think that's the long and short of it.
And it concentrates people in the same places. Like it's not.
Right, that's one of the unintended consequences.
Yeah.
You get a flash mob at these places where these things get critical mass. And it goes beyond what all the good things about sharing your experiences on the river. It goes way past that into something weird. That's just bad, right?
Right.
Well, Kevin's not done there. Okay, go ahead, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I bottom lined this for Weld as we were on the pre-show, which is use a 45-degree or higher paddle. And don't post anything on social media unless your last name is Sarah Solstice. That's the rule.
And
otherwise, nobody wants to see it. Just email it to your mom.
And Kevin's not done yet. Essentially, he lets us know that I think he's kind of really pointing to Lewis on this. That yeah, you're correct about the paddle length. People are using paddles that are too short, but unfortunately, you are wrong about offset and bent shaft. 60-degree offset, it's all in your head and sacrifices other benefits of lower offsets. And bent shaft, yes, it's slightly heavier and weaker, but inconsequentially so for all but the most elite racers or heavy hitter big waterfall runners. What's wrong with better ergonomics?
I don't know. I think everybody should just do what they want. I feel like we've provided a public service here, and people are defending their own poor choices now, and we've done all we can.
Nick White writes in. This is actually a good one. Nick calls us out, rightfully so.
He makes
here.
a good point.
Nick White says we were in our discussion last week with and we interchanged offset and feather with that, and I want to be very clear about the difference of the two. The feather is the difference in the angle of your left blade versus your right blade. That would be your 45, 60, dreaded 0, whatever you want to be. And your offset is the center of the blade of the catch point and its alignment to the shaft itself.
Right.
Did I explain that well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm using an Adachi now, and it has a big offset because the dihedral of the blade set far forward of the paddle shaft. And to be honest, I think the next paddle, I'm going to go back to the Shogun, I think, for my next paddle. I have to be, in my own personal preference. I'm not a big fan of the offset.
Interesting. Why is that?
It just feels like it has a weird rotation in my hands. I don't know. I don't think it's bad. It's just not. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah. See, I was totally.
It felt a little weird to me at first when I first started using the Manix, but I think what I really like about it is it like by having the blade offset from your hand, it feels like it like stabilizes the blade in the water a little bit. Like you get like a super powerful clean catch with it.
Yeah.
And it also feels
agree.
like it like opens up and you get a really nice touch on draws.
Right.
But it does
I could see that.
I feel like when you're doing like a stern draw, you lose a little bit of power because you're not able to like close the blade behind you quite as much. And sometimes when you're taking backstrokes, it can feel a little weird because it's like the blade wants to, you're getting the opposite of that benefit that you're getting on the catch, and the blade wants to like rotate a little bit almost. But I like it.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
yeah, I
It
agree.
does.
I agree with that 100%.
I think it's the only two. These are both big paddle blades, but I think the Odachi and or the Shogun are the only two whitewater blades you really want to look at if you're serious about paddling whitewater.
I'll agree with
Dude.
that. I'll agree with
The
that
Manic.
100%.
Have you tried the Manics?
No, I haven't.
And this is, and one.
Manics are the bee's knees.
Do you have some like side deal going on with these guys or something, Lewis? I'm gonna have to edit all these comments out about these panels. All right. See, we just exposed some things there on the Hammer Factor. Did you catch that, listeners? Lewis has got a side hustle.
Man.
This is so lawyer. This is so like lawyer, just the way they work through the system and get things up to the top. Okay.
Insulted.
Moving up.
I can't believe, Grace, you of all people are calling me out on my varied conflicts of interest.
What are you talking about? Um,
I'm telling you, man, Galasport Manics are the best peeling paddle that you can get.
just buy 3 at a time. The bottom line is that's it for paddle offset. So if we can, if we are we all in agreement, we're not going to talk about that for a while.
I'm very much over it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what time did we have? Were we going to bring Ryan on?
20 minutes ago.
20 minutes ago. Okay, we are
I just sent him an email.
We're running behind time. All right, so let's pull him on. I'll tell you what, while I get him on my list here, do you guys want to go through one or two more listener mails? Weld?
Let's talk about Ure.
Okay. Uri's your neighbor, isn't he?
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm looking at his bakery right now outside our window. I think Ure should. From what I'm seeing right here, Ure should be banned from the show. I think.
I think you should be forced to go back and listen comprehensively through the entirety of the Hammer Factor archives.
I'm just going to read the first sentence of his email. Fun to listen to you guys. However, your bashing on slalom is not helping anything. And we could just end this. I don't have to read any more. When have we ever bashed on slalom?
Never.
Right? I'm not going to argue that we've pointed out that slalom is in dire straits in the United States, but have we ever bashed on slalom?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we lament it's the contemporary state of affairs, but
Right. Is there anything better for learning how to read whitewater than slalom?
I'm not sure reading whitewater is the skill I would most ascribe to slalom, but yes, Bailey.
All right, Ryan Bailey, welcome to the Hammer Factor.
Hey, yeah,
What's up?
happy to be on. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
Hey, can I ask you a quick question?
as long as it's not about paddle offset.
Shit. All right, never mind.
Okay, I'll answer it. Yeah, what do you want to know?
What offset do you have? Actually, what paddle feather do you have?
Shit, I got like 4 different paddles for different flows. It's just such a dynamic question.
So like, you have one that's 45, another one that's 60, another one that's like
I
65.
got like a 15-degree one, for surfing big waves, but just so I can still keep that control hand. I got some 65s, some kind of weird slalom things with bent shafts and these gigantic battle axe of blades for the North Fork at high water. You just got to show up, you got to have a quiver. And sometimes you got to, you got like 4 boats, 5 paddles, you got to be prepared for everything.
Yeah, I would have guessed that based on your car collection and kayak collection that you at least have one or two like 80 to 90 degree paddles squirreled away somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have them when you, I'll get the dancer out, go do some pirouettes. There's no way I'm gonna be in a 0 degree, switching hands, trying to do paddle twirls with that. But I mean, it's just a dynamic thing because Jacob Senevi, he was out here from the Czech, and we paddled a bunch together, and he's like, bro, you have good technique, but sometimes on North Fork you got to take 2 bad strokes instead of 1 good one because his explanation was basically your shoulders and your body geometry are going to be, you get that jammed into the rocks on the North Fork, and there goes your shoulder. So there's sort of like a good study, it sounded like you guys were talking about, but a lot of it, paddling is only 50% of it. Edging the boat and using the current is the other sort of part. But if you're in flat water, go for it.
Man, I'm impressed that the Hammer Factor has made it out to Crouch. I sent you that email yesterday, and I was like, I don't know if you've heard of this out there, but we have this thing called podcast.
I know. I think I just it takes like about a year to download. It's still like on a 56.6 baud rate.
So Ryan, let me back up just a second before we get into what's going on there in Couch. But you are the editor of Banks Mag.
Yep.
And where are you from, and how did you get in? Just give us some background for people who don't know anything about you.
Oh, geez. Well, my name is Bailey, and I've just been in Banks now. This will be 21 years, full time, kind of doing this thing. I got exposed to kayaking with the Long family, Trent Long and Chad Long and Kenneth Long. They were all slalom boaters. Their dad, coached and stuff, and so. Anyway, it's kind of a long story, but basically just kind of got involved into kayaking with them, and they had just taken over Cascade Raft Company and stuff. So I was just basically hanging out with them, kind of learning all the fundamentals of traditional slalom technique and stuff like that, and then worked up on the payette as a guide to pay for my kayaking habit as I kind of got into it. But yeah, so anyway, fast forward, it's been one big summer for me. I don't really remember. 21 years flies by.
Did you grow up in Crouch?
I grew up down in Eagle, which is just over the hill. But yeah, so I mean, my first exposure to whitewater was probably I think it was the 1994 Masters Nationals or something they had on the payette, and it was quite a trip because I'd been, messing around in the pool, stuff like that, show up and holy cow, just over the hill, 20 minutes, there's a whole different sort of world going on over here. And of course the Longs were, they paddled with a bunch of attitude. So people were like, oh, the Long boys in slalom world were kind of these renegades. And I remember looking over and they're like, oh, the Vermont boys are here. I'm like, oh, who are the Vermont boys? And it's basically all these blonde-haired kids, and fast forward, one of them was Fred Coriel, right? So anyway, there was a huge party, and we're watching all the adults get drunk, and we're partying, and that left an impression on me for sure. I want to be a part of this. So
nice, man.
So anyway,
I believe I was there at that.
Yeah, you probably were there too.
Junior Nationals at Bronco Billy in 95, probably.
Yeah, I still have the poster.
We're all dating ourselves here.
Yeah, but I think you guys talk about social media and stuff, and that definitely, there was no social media. I just basically saw this kid with a pink Patagonia sweater, and you're like, oh, that guy's outdoorsy. And there's another guy that lived down the street and was like, yeah, there's these guys. They have 20 kayaks in their front yard. We should see who lives there. So we'd ride our bike in front of their house to kind of see what that was all about. Because it's the 90s. Everybody wants to be extreme and stuff. And kayaking was kind of an extreme sport, I guess, considered. And so anyway, it turns out it was Chad's house, and he'll tell you, I was his first friend in middle school. They just moved up from California, so that's how I got into the scene. And then throughout just the time, guiding and meeting other people, I mean, there was a whole scene of world-class, nobodies up in Banks from the beginning. There always has been. And, so you meet people like Conrad and Damon, and of course, Danger Dave he's about my age, but he was like significantly better. So, they'd come rip into the gutter like 100 miles an hour in their Mercedes, boats flying off and right disco and doing tricks. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to learn this bow draw, the way that Tom Wong sees fit. So anyway, that's kind of how we got exposed to all that stuff. And I guess, fast forward to the magazine, that was definitely a community effort. There was, Melissa Newell, Fred Coriel's wife now, Melissa Coriel, and you have John Metz, who's like, again, at one point he was like the youngest person to run a T2B, but there was no Facebook to talk about it, but he was kind of a Charlie Muncie protege. And then you got James McLeod, who's just a character and, from Northern California and stuff. So basically we just tried to, at the campfires at night, everyone's just living in the dirt down by the river and sharing stories around the campfire and stuff. And it's just like, geez, people need to hear these stories, But there was a certain level of humility. People don't really talk about themselves in Banks. It was kind of just like, that's what we do. And so we started to flesh out some of those stories and stuff like that. And, there's different rivalries, there's different groups and stuff. And Melissa was definitely, we call her Mother Earth. I mean, you can't help not but like her. So she was kind of combined these different factions and stuff and really made it like a family up there. And so anyway, that's kind of how it got its start. And then, of course, everybody kind of moves on and does other stuff. And I kind of feel sometimes like the last member of the Leonard Skinner band, is this a good idea? Does anybody want to hear Freebird anymore? Well, but there's a whole new crew in Banks, and so I guess where we're at now is people have been asking a lot, like why we haven't come out with one. And one of them, I'm a perfectionist. Two, I think that kayaking deserves an aesthetic that's unique to itself, not copying snowboarding and skiing or any other sport. I mean, it's a unique sport that deserves an aesthetic, and as an artist, I want to try to preserve that integrity. And three, there's a new crew in Banks, and so it's been pretty much like, well, we don't want to talk about 2008 or 9 or 10. Is there's Cole Moore's out here and a bunch of Dirty South boys and women. So it's just kind of like, okay, well, what works? How can we push that forward? And of course, then there's been a lot of energy in the NFC. That takes a lot of energy too. So
I love that Whitewater has its own authentic voice. You don't hear that often. It seems like
no, it's so true. That's so true, because when we first we started IR and in the late '90s and wave sport and IR and bomber gear, and we knew that kayaking had an identity, but we had such an inferiority complex about that identity. We just
Right.
assumed that it'd be cooler for us to pretend like we were surfers or snowboarders.
totally.
And we just took things right from their playbook. When we saw Banks Mag, I remember seeing it being like, this is actually catching the unique, special, awesome aspect of Whitewater. That's why I loved it. It was just perfect. It was perfect.
Yeah.
So
I think at first too, people are giving you feedback and they're like, are you being nice because it's just that bad, and then you start to realize and be able to take, accept criticism and good and bad from work and stuff like that. And the other thing is on the video side of things, we were starting to make these short films and stuff when Skip was living in Boise, Skip Armstrong, and suddenly, though, we were kind of thrust, like we're like in these dirtbag kayakers. We're in Banff and all of these mountain film festivals, and I'm basically getting kicked out of North Face parties, and it's like sneaking beers into these wine galas, because we couldn't help but be ourselves. And now that I've had kind of a different perspective and kind of how stuff goes, like we were just these dirtbag kayakers, and we went to a film festival at the Center for the Arts in the Gorge, and I remember we were at the takeout on the white salmon, and Banks, like, all beers are everybody's beers, and so I'm like, oh yeah, hey, grab a beer. And they're like, what, those aren't your beers.
Elitist.
Oh, yeah, I had to put it back, like, oh geez.
Oh man.
So
I apologize, and if I ever find out who that was.
who knows this? I don't know. But I remember Boomer was there, and so he was still living there at the time, and we just knew him from Idaho and stuff, and so he kind of came out and was like, oh, Bailey, what's going on, and like, well, who, well, if Boomer likes them, I guess they're okay, but you can't be stealing beers from people, So anyway, that's kind of like a nutshell, random sort of how we got our start. But we got a lot of big stuff we want to keep doing. But again, there's people like I said, I used Cole Moore's name. He's been out there, and there's a bunch of other people that kind of found these old issues at the cafe, and they're like, these things are awesome. I'm like, hey, yeah, we could still do it if you guys want to. And but I really do believe in that aesthetic and kayakers finding their own voice, because it's just a lot of people are trying to climb the tallest mountains, and we're trying to go to the lowest points of the earth, and be down in these gorges. So I think it's just super unique.
Would you do, if you did it again, you continue to have it printed?
Yeah. And that's definitely been like the other sort of, there's just so many, conflicts. It's like, well, if we put it online, we're kind of reinforcing this idea that, anybody can create a blog. For a long time there were, how many blogs were there out there? So you kind of like diminish the value of these stories. And then, so we kind of just said, no social media. We don't have a Facebook page. Our website's down. We're going to come out with this. It usually surprises people, and most people are like, "Yeah, I read it in the bathroom somewhere down in Chile or wherever."
No, I couldn't support that decision more.
Yeah, I just think that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I say you guys have an advertiser, at least one, when you're ready to launch.
Okay, yeah, sweet.
So you.
But the social media thing. You guys have talked about it before, and you can complain about it or whatever, but it ultimately, like, it's a reality that exists. But it's unfortunate, because the good thing is it makes the kayaking community small, right? So you hear people all the time like, oh, I saw this, that, and the other thing, and it really inspired me to go to Chile or whatever, and I think that's awesome. On the flip side, though, and I think Lewis talked about it in the last one, it was basically you have like the LDub, and there's all these things that kind of, if someone's running outlet, you see it run by 90 people, and then the Stakeen had its time, and it kind of diminishes the value and experiences of some of these places, and then also, promotes people to maybe not take care of it. But I think there's something to be said for stories that happened in kayaking 10 years ago. Like, just because it wasn't an instantaneous thing doesn't mean it has value. And so I'm trying to like curate these stories and purposely not be the first one to put them out, because, Team Beer is just their stories. I just feel lucky to be at a campfire with those guys and to hear their stories are just incredible, and it's kind of like, hanging out with Fred and hearing stories from LVM, if you're able to pull those out of him. But to reduce those just to social media and likes, I think, is a huge disservice to the experience and the sport.
Yeah, man.
Value bombs galore right there.
Seriously. It's like it has a way of almost like homogenizing culture, It's like I feel like something that's so cool about Banks Mag and about the scene at the North Fork is it's just its own place with its own like sort of like community aesthetic, and it feels like it's a different thing going on there in a way, and it's just like such a cool community, and it's cool that you can put together this thing that does justice to the vibe there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks. I mean, that was the thing too, with the early NFCs was, James Bird caught a lot of flack for that too from some people. And they're like, you're going to invite all these pros and they're still kind of anti-pro scene. And James was like, yeah, because if we don't, someone will discover this place. There's been no big race here. Like somebody will come in and do it their way, and then you'll be even more upset. So why don't we do it our way and just do it the bank's way? And so, that whole sort of 6 months before the race or whenever he announced he was doing it was a lot of back and forth from both sides. Like, we got to keep it roots. And it's like, I believe in keeping it roots, but I don't know. It is a special place, and stuff. But I think those early NFCs, we kind of were like, well, this is how we're doing it. Like the river's hard. The bar's scarier than the river, and so it's a huge party. I don't know.
Maybe this is a good segue into the question from the guy about the South Fork of the salmon.
Yeah. So, man, South Fork salmon, and again, that I think it's with social media. I just really feel like we have to be good stewards of this place. It's awesome to have these goals and you want to check them off on your belt. But something for me that I think that the sort of theme of whitewater colonialism is this sort of thing where you ran the shit, you slept with their women, and then you're on to the next thing. And you got like 170 likes. I mean, I feel like, a lot of people are sort of open-minded and progressive in kayaking, but, there's a lot of hypocrisy too. So you can't take yourself so seriously. And we're so passionate about certain issues with the earth and stuff like this. But I mean, for me, living in Banks or close to the South Salmon, you're taking pictures like right in my front yard. So it's not that it's mine or I own it, but it's kind of like, just because you discovered it doesn't make it your right to kind of blow the place open. And I'm not saying keep it a secret or keep it under wraps, but just treat it with respect. I don't really know how to say that more, but I think the South Salmon over the last 3 or 4 years has seen a lot more people come there, which is really incredible because it's a really incredible river. And on the flip side, that sort of promotion is good because now it's, threatened by this mine. So I think there's a way to do both, to kind of use it to your, so people see that you're using the South Salmon, but let's not love it to death,
What's the inside scoop on the mine going in there? What are you guys hearing?
Oh man, there's so much going on. I mean, ultimately, the whole EIS process and the whole Forest Service process has got to kind of work itself out. That being said, Idaho Rivers United and the other conservation groups are definitely, promoting more public outreach and comment and stuff like that. Freddie and Melissa up in McCall are really kind of helping get people confident to speak out as far as McCall goes with like the city agreement and stuff like that. So obviously I'm against the mine, but I think in some ways, because Midas has been operating, the cities and communities around here have already kind of given them social permission by accepting their money to their schools, to the Little Ski Hill and programs like that. So while I'm on board to fight the mine, it's just the whole government process with the Forest Service is really tough, and you got to kind of wait for it to get through certain. We got to wait for it to go through some of these EIS processes, because the hands are kind of tied with the Mining Act.
Yeah, I guess do you want to read that question, Grace, or the question was basically just what's the update on?
Well, the email came from Sam Wells. Who you know Sam?
Yeah, Sam's the man.
Yeah. Hi, Hammer Factor. I've been late to the podcast, but enjoying going back and forth, listening to many episodes. I'm currently most interested in the proposed reopening of the mine and the headwaters of the South Fork of the Salmon River in Idaho. Between the Golfing and Yellow Pine and the East Fork, South Fork, and South Salmon, there's hardly a better extended weekend in kayaking. It's a bit soul-crushing to know they're planning to reopen and expanding the mine into this amazing place. I'd love to hear you talk about the process that has to happen for this mine to open in potential areas where public can intervene. And he also said, P.S. to John Weld, well, certainly we have a higher rate of scary kayaking hermits up here in Idaho. I know at times McKee and myself are not helping change that stereotype, but there are plenty of really friendly extrovert kayakers out here. I mean, I have a picture in my mind of Idaho being kind of the hermit kingdom,
Yeah. No, that's
Like-
great.
I suppose you have like a loaded gun just out of screen on Skype.
Yeah. You never know. There's so many things to protect yourself from. I mean, I don't have an ad blocker. I just have a 357. No, I'll be honest. Like, I see both sides of the mine. They definitely want to go in, but the legal process is more complicated than just being against it, because there needs to be a legitimate alternative to the mine for the Forest Service to say, yeah, we can't do that. And so I've got all kinds of far out proposals that almost got me thrown out of shuttle rigs for proposing them. But one of their things is that they're like, we're going to realign this stream, for the salmon and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that allows them to use the language such as sustainable, and they're like restoring this sort of ecosystem and make people feel good about it. But the reality is, I mean, and Lewis knows, I mean, it's just a part of the culture in the Northwest and in the gorge. I mean, at this point, even scientists are saying it's not even about any salmon. It's specifically about wild salmon recovery. And without the dams being removed on the lower Snake, this sort of marketing ploy to better this system at the headwaters of the salmon is a joke, because they can spend millions of dollars doing that, but the fish are never going to get up there. So my wild idea is like, why don't we just, instead of just being, hey, we're against you, why don't you join our cause with your clout and say, hey, we're Midas Gold. We're for wild salmon recovery. Help us remove the dams on the lower Snake. Kind of put, basically put your money where your mouth is. They're probably not going to do that, but it's a conversation. I think it's just a wild idea. But
yeah, that's an interesting idea. Yeah, I guess just to back up even further for the people who are new to this, I mean, the South Fork of the Salmon is, in my eyes, the best big water multi-day in the lower 48, and I would have a hard time thinking of what's second. And there's this gold mine proposal in the headwaters of the South Salmon, basically on top of the East Fork of the South Fork, which is also a really mean whitewater run. And all this is governed by the 1872 mining law, and it's like the mining regime in our country is, 150 years old, and it basically like really radically limits the ability of land management agencies to say no to mining projects. And this, this Midas Gold project, I mean, I've heard the guys from ICL, just Idaho Conservation League, describe Midas Gold as like their favorite mining company with their least favorite project. And they're like super, super sophisticated operators, and they've put together this really slick marketing operation for this mine that they're basically selling it as a restoration project that, oh, by the way, is going to do some mining because, there is historic mining up there that's created some problems. But, what they're proposing is a huge expansion of the footprint up there with, basically an engineering project that is almost incomprehensible in scale, involving like rerouting rivers and all sorts of things, and like putting salmon through a lighted tunnel, and like it's crazy. And
yeah, it's all pretty much stuff that hasn't been done, and there's just a huge sort of tailing pond that they want to this is the benefit to the community, they say, is to remove this and all this contaminated stuff. But it's been a super fun site in the past. And the scale of the project, there's just no possible way for them to not have heavy metals leach into all of the downstream corridor. And just recently, it's not just, there's steelhead industry and salmon fishing, lower down on the river, and all the communities downstream. Idaho's the whitewater state, and there's more undammed whitewater in our state than anywhere. But on the other hand, it just kind of seems preposterous that they want to try this large scale thing that, there's nothing but risk involved. And so anyway, that's what everyone's, for good reason.
yeah, so the environmental impact statement, or the draft EIS for this project, is coming out. It sounds like sometime next summer or early fall. And there will be some opportunities for people to get involved when that happens. And in the meantime, I know there's a bunch of folks, like kind of led by Freddie and Melissa and McCall, I guess it sounds like, who have been doing a bunch of community organizing up there in, opposition to basically the town, accepting Midas's money as sort of like a payoff through this like community benefits agreement. And I know that they're real jazzed about, getting the city of McCall to vote in opposition to that for the time being. And, Freddie was telling me that the Nez Perce have been fighting it pretty hard. So I think, for all of us, there's probably not a ton to do right this hot minute, but, we're certainly, as kayakers, I think there's going to be some opportunities for us to kind of keep fighting this thing.
I don't know. Switch gears here. We gotta kind of move on. We've got some other guests lined up here, Ryan.
Yeah, totally.
Big thanks for coming on, but
Heck yeah.
I really like your idea of going back to print. You got to do it a little different than a traditional magazine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
give us a little insight. What's going to be on the table of contents? What are you going to cover in this first issue back?
Well, we've got a lot of stuff that we're excited about. Let me look at a couple. I've got a couple things right in front of me. One of them is this kind of just this whitewater colonialism thing, and it's
I
not.
love that.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of like one idea that's getting worked out. We did an interview with this kid Liam Kelly. He's badass photographer, and he shot for National Geographic. He grew up in the West, or he's from the West but grew up in Nepal. And then Mike McKee got him a job in Banks, and the kid's got just a really unique perspective of Nepal sort of being this sort of almost zoo for the Western world to come and be on vacation, and just the kind of conflict with, as a kayaker, we don't want any more dams. As someone that lives in Nepal, who are we to tell them that they don't deserve electricity? So just so that we can go have this adventure in the wild. So these sort of things that have keep people thinking, and just move beyond. We saw, we ran the shit.
Yeah. No. I hear you. I love it.
How can people subscribe or get more information on this? How can they?
They can send a self-addressed stamped envelope to. I'm gonna get those subscription cards back. No, we got to redo our website. It's in the works right now, and Lewis kind of asked before I came on, and we may or may not buy the Banks Cafe, and so, I get, is that the food? Does that count as a food truck at the takeout?
Hell yeah, it does.
Okay, well, whatever. It's a ski lodge. It's like a ski lodge at a Alpha. Every day is a powder day on the North Fork. So,
Yes.
I've been kind of busy with it, but I when I get closer to putting this thing out, I'd love to come chat with you guys, and I'll send you a bill, John, and
Absolutely.
okay, we'll make you an ad.
I'd be honored. And for everyone listening out there, when Banks Mag comes back out again, you have to get a hold of this. It's a really important part of paddling culture.
Well, hey, you guys are too. This is great. No more paddle offset talk though.
No, we're done.
Done.
We're done.
I don't
Yeah,
even
we're done.
care what the data says. Like,
No.
run a couple T to Bs with every offset, and you tell me. I mean,
Well, we definitely, the whole first part of this show was talking about how we're not going to talk about paddle offset anymore. So
yeah.
hopefully we'll move past that.
You guys are awesome.
Awesome, Ryan Bailey.
Dude,
Thanks for
man.
coming on the
All right.
Hammer Factor. And
Thank you. I want an invite to the Banks Cafe grand reopening party.
Oh yeah, definitely invite only. But you guys, yeah.
what's the
All right,
URL?
cheers, guys.
What's the URL there before we let you go for the Banks Mag website? Do you still own the URL?
The banksmag.com.
Banksmag.com. All right. Thank
All right.
you.
Later, Bailey.
Sick. I can't wait for the next Banks Mag. You know what
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about, like the
Those
process.
are so great. They are so great.
Yeah.
They are just so good. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's so much good. I mean, there's so much good writing in there. There's so many stories you've never heard before. I mean, I remember reading the story about like your and Freddie's early trip up to the Iskit was like the inspiration for me and the Wells brothers spending like 2.5 days hiking through Devil's Club up there. I mean, there's just so much good information in there and just so much good humor and just like the soul of the sport, man.
Yeah. And this is something for another show, but as a publisher who's published both print and DVDs and online stuff and online videos, even with video, there's something different about taking a project and actually printing it to a DVD and making a run of it. Just the care that goes into that versus putting it online. And I know that same process happens for print. So, I mean, people say print is dead, but I don't know, man. I think there's like this craving for organic, you know?
I'm getting more, like, from the core outdoor companies are doing more print marketing, like catalogs and that kind of stuff than I've seen in years. I think it's making a comeback.
I think we should put out the next episode of the podcast on cassette.
Oh, sick idea. That's why we keep you around, dude. Oh, man. Okay.
All right, Shane's waiting.
Okay, let's get
Shane's on deck.
Shane Benedict on the show. While I bring him on the show, Lewis or Weld, what's he going to talk about?
He's going to talk about plastic. I got to have a better understanding of plastic and kayaks, and I want to get his opinion on a couple things as well.
Okay, let's... I'm not sure there's anybody who knows more, who has had their hands in plastic more than Shane. So hopefully he shows up right now. Did you ever make it out to the Little White, Weld?
Finally ran the Little White.
PFD of the Little White. So who were you with? Who was the group? Give us the rundown.
I was with the usual suspects. Geltman. Who else was there? Max.
Weld would not listen to a word of my beta. Every time I would tell him something, Weld would just like turn around and look at Max and Eddie out.
Caselli. Yeah.
Are you serious?
Hell yeah. I know what Lewis is trying to do. I know all about it. He's like, we're above like Wishbone. He's like, truck and trailer. I'm like, truck and what? Is that the name of the rapid? And he has this like look on his face. I'm like, no, And I had Eddie out. I'm like, what's this? They go, yeah, this is actually a big waterfall. Like,
all right, well.
It was good. I mean, it's my take on it was it's obviously a great stretch of whitewater. It was like 10 rapids that I would love to have scouted just so I could get the line down right, because, you're atop of these things and Max is like, well, it's a drop, and then there's a little flake about halfway down, and then you're going to want to hit this boil and go to the right of the boil, and there's a big horseshoe ledge. You want to go off the right side of the horseshoe ledge. I'm like, and I'm like, you get to the lip of this thing, and it's like you have like a flash bulb. Like, that's how long you have to analyze the situation before you're immediately getting shoved right into a cave. And after like 10 of these, you start to get a little fried for sure, One
thing that always sticks out to me.
It's a project. I got to go back and run it a bunch for sure. It's just hard to. It's just. I had this. I don't know. It's hard to run, and we've had a couple of people ask about paddling when you have kids and stuff like that, and I don't know that it's like you stop running class 5 because you're worried about the safety aspect of it, but I mean when you have a couple of kids and you run your own business or whatever, it's hard to. I'm not going to say the word is selfish, but you have to have a certain amount of dedication to your own pursuits to run that kind of whitewater, when you get to a certain point in life, right? It's just really tough to do. I don't know. It's a challenge, but one that I plan to address. I'm just not exactly sure how at the moment.
Rain on snow heading this way.
So. Yeah, I'm going to paddle some more this weekend, see how it goes. Keep chipping away. We did the upper wind last weekend, is that right? Upper wind? That was fun. It was good. It's cool.
Wait till the water comes up. Get really good.
Yeah.
Grace, have you run the wind?
I haven't ran the wind, no.
The wind is like our...
It's like upper yaki type. I mean, it's the closest thing I'd come to saying upper yak around here.
Yeah, wait till the water turns on, and it's like the Stikine with no pools.
Yeah, I'll probably pass it.
It's definitely the Gorge local big water run when the floats align.
All right, well, welcome back to the Hammer Factor. Shane Benedict, special guest here. How's it going, buddy?
Very good. How are you guys doing?
Good, man.
Good. What's your title at Liquid Logic? Like, how would you classify yourself there?
I've had a hard time with that. I don't know.
Co-founder, designer.
There you go. That's good.
All right. I just want to make sure people know that you're the real deal and not just some dude.
Hold on. We're doing a big cleaning the rugs. I'm trying to avoid all the.
Shane's currently walking to the office right here. So we have some questions. Specifically, John has some questions for you on plastic. So
yeah.
let's do it.
All right. You ready? You're
Yeah.
kind of walking around. You're just going to walk around the whole time, or how's this going to...
I'm just trying to cut down on the sound for you guys. There really is like a carpet machine going in the background. All right. I'm here. Look,
Okay.
all this plastic.
All right. So I was out at dinner at a guy's house who's a paddler, and he started going on a rant saying how plastic has gotten cheaper and boats are breaking faster, like in the past, say, 5 or 10 years. Right. And just from a manufacturing standpoint, I knew there were several flaws with that statement. Right. That's just not the way things work. And so,
Correct.
And he started asking me, we started discussing plastics. I realized I really know nothing about, the materials these boats are made out of. And I figured what better place to discuss this is on this show and then with you as well. So, all right. So let's get right into it. When you talk about plastics for whitewater kayaks, I'm guessing there is probably 2 or 3 different types of plastics. You guys sort of all source it from the same place. Like there's just not a great variety in plastic out there.
There are a handful of companies that make plastics that put them together, and basically they're all high density polyethylene, HDPE. It's
right.
Formulated, for kayaks.
And so like where Piranha gets their plastic from, and the formula they're using, or is that totally proprietary?
I don't think that it's totally proprietary. I do not know the exact plastic that they're getting, but I know the range of what it is. Yes.
Right. So it's not a huge variance there.
No.
When you talk about linear or cross-link, we used to make boats out of cross-link plastic years ago, and that kind of fell out of favor. What all happened with that?
It's just toxic material. Actually it says in the MSDS that if you make something out of that plastic, you're supposed to wipe it down with like acetone on the inside before you use it. Like it's that toxic. The guys would have rashes on their arms that molded those boats. There's stories of people that even worked in the offices of those companies that had migraine headaches that went away as soon as they stopped using crosslink.
Oh, God.
In the
Nice.
factory.
Was it better
it's
plastic
toxic.
though? Like was it a better plastic for kayaks in general?
I mean, it
toxicity
definitely-
notwithstanding.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that it had going for it was a stiffness factor that was better, but it also it definitely had some positive traits, but I mean, nothing close to worth the nastiness that stuff has. If you've even ever been in a factory that's running crosslink, it's gnarly.
Right. So
My
when you look,
recollection with those boats too is that they would get really brittle with age. Like they didn't age as well as the linear roads.
Yeah, and that's I don't know that much about. I don't know a whole lot about crosslink, and I don't know how the UV packages and that sort of stuff, the different balances of stiffness.
yeah, no shit.
There he is.
Dude, I don't know what just happened there. Are you guys there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna have to cover that again.
Yeah.
Oh, so crosslink boats were generally more brittle. I mean, is that was one of the downsides of crosslink plastic? Besides the toxicity.
Yeah, but they lasted pretty well. But I did notice there was quite a bit more catastrophic failures. But I mean, none of that really even compares with the toxicity. It's awful if you've been in a building that's molding that stuff.
So how hard is it for you guys to formulate a plastic for your boat? Like I know, another way of asking this would be is if you're a new boat company, would it be easy to buy really bad plastic for years and years and make boats that are crappy until you figure it out? Or is it something easy to jump into and get a good source for plastic? Like how carefully do you guard your formula?
The plastic companies there's guys that even say, hey, here's some kayak plastic. I mean,
I see.
When you talk to a different company, and there's a handful of people that make something that they'll call kayak plastic or, super tough. It's like they're making, giant water tanks that have to hold up to a lot of pressure, and they're out in the sun and they take a beating. They even make like these manhole inserts that are underground. They get driven over out of plastic. And so they have this high end plastic that they need for other purposes also. Right. And then what they do is they can just tweak the stiffness, durability, abrasion resistance, and UV packages to fit kind of what you're looking for.
Right. So I guess the other side of this question is you hear people be like, well, Liquid Logic boats break easier than Piranha boats, or Waka boats break easier. I mean, as a manufacturer, I know those are tough claims to make. I mean, what's the science behind this? Like what's actually happening here? Is that a rotomolding problem, or is it just coincidental? Or, I mean, are you guys making pretty much the same type of hulls durability wise?
There is some variance. There's definitely a little variance in the plastics, and I feel pretty, proud that we've worked pretty hard on plastics, but the difference is not huge at all. The huge difference is made in the production.
Like, how do you mean?
So it undercooking or overcooking the plastic, overcuring or undercuring are catastrophic for the boat. So
is that an easy mistake to make, or is that something that you should be able to solve in the first 6 months of your opening your kayak business?
Well, it's kind of that's not true. It's not that easy. There's every boat needs a different recipe, and actually many boats need a different recipe for each color of that boat. So it might need to cook 30 seconds longer or a minute longer if it's blue than if it's orange, or that's not true. That's an exaggeration, but a little bit longer or a little bit less changes that cure. Uh-huh. And a 50-pound boat to a 30-pound boat has a different cure time cycle, So if you're doing a creek boat, it's a lot different than doing a play boat.
Right.
So if somebody makes the mistake of not changing the program, it may be the same temperature, it may be the same rotations, the same air durations, and those kind of things that go into the production. but that extra time will overcure, or if it has less time, it could undercure, and both are catastrophic.
Right.
They're horrible for it. So if the guy's not paying attention running the boats, it's pretty. They need to be on it for sure. It's a skill for sure.
And so when a customer breaks a Liquid Logic boat, and it comes into the factory, and what's sort of the thought process behind warranting these things, or taking care of the customer, or going back to the customer and saying, like, listen, you just broke this boat? Like, how does that pan out? Like, what's the internal process for that?
All I can say is I don't want Obi's job.
Yeah.
The first, one of the very first things he does, maybe I shouldn't be giving this away, is he checks their Facebook profile and sees what videos they posted.
Yeah.
And, if there's a shot of somebody pulling a Ryan McAvoy, that's no warranty.
Right. I mean, people come back to us and they'll be like, maybe you have a bad batch of fabric and that's why my dry suit's leaking. And I could pretty much say without question, it's not a bad batch of fabric. Like that's just not what it is, right? Do you have a similar situation in where people will be like, maybe this plastic's bad? Or are you like, no, you just abuse this boat? Or do you sometimes screw up the plastic or overcook it? And can you identify that problem and take care of it? Like, how often does that happen?
Yeah, you can identify that. The brakes are different. Everybody knows a traditional brake is it's a 3-inch, 5-inch, at the most, sort of crack that splits open. You usually don't get a jagged, funky brake, and that may happen. It could be an overcook. It could be undercook is just as bad. And it could be like some sort of bad mix in the plastic that could come from the manufacturer. That we've seen that before.
Right. So what destroys boats? Like, what's the fastest way to destroy your perfectly good brand new Liquid Logic kayak?
Run the green 100 times.
Yeah.
Swim on the little white at high water
in the middle of summer.
Well, Obi he's got a thing where somebody walks in and the end of the boat is squished. He goes, so you swam out of Zwicks. He knows. It's like you swam out of Zwicks and the boat went over Gorilla full of water. That's what happens. And you see the boat crumpled up and then what happened around here,
Yeah. Can you repair these things? I hear people repairing their boats, when they crack. Is that something that actually works? Or is that something that's half-assed?
Totally. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. If you take your time and you learn how to weld plastic, you can do it really well.
And what's the 30-second lesson on repairing your boat? Like, what do you need to do?
It's just, and I don't weld metal that much, but getting all the materials the same temperature so that they mix together well. What people tend to do is they tend to do a surface weld where they only get it on the top. Yeah. And they make it look pretty, but they haven't penetrated down through the layers of the plastic so that they're welding together the entire sheets.
Do they need to match the exact kind of plastic that's in the boat? Do they need to get a piece of plastic from you, or how does that work?
It's better. I would say that's probably a good idea. The first thing you can do is just take a cut out of the back of your cockpit rim. Just take a sliver out of that, and then it's the exact same plastic. Right. But then, we sell welding rods, and we put up a few videos about how to weld boats for sure.
So, like, one of the things that we deal with is, we could make a spray skirt that is considerably stronger than we have right now, but it's going to cost people $400.
Right.
And that's just not a marketable thing. Do you guys experience the same thing? Like, you could make a kayak that is lighter and stronger, but it's going to cost people $2,500, and it's just not worth it.
No, we don't really have that. There's no material right now that we can use to make a boat that's any better than this right now.
Right.
Boats are crazy. We've been doing this a long time, and it's not that much better. I'd say there hasn't been a ton of change. There's some subtle nuances here and there, but there hasn't been a ton of change in the last 15 years.
So boats are getting heavier, though. That's been my and I think that's because people are paddling harder stuff on average, and they're demanding more out of their boats.
100% agree
Right.
with that.
And so you just can't put a 30-pound boat in production anymore. It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, can people still order those from you if they want? Like they say, I want a 30-pound.
I'm not opening that up.
Can I call you later on? Ask for a 30-pound map.
Call me later, Weld. Call me later.
What you got
All
cooking?
Right, so can we switch over?
What you got cooking down there?
Yeah, well, hold on.
Go
hold
ahead.
on. Before we get to that, so Waka has come out with this new Steez, right?
Yeah.
With replaceable pod. Give us your opinion on that.
I think it's awesome, but I mean, hopefully it's not for them, but it seems like a manufacturing nightmare. And I think it's super cool. You know, a little funky to have the extra weight in the back end of the boat. Hopefully you can compensate that by moving your seat around. It'd be a little bit heavier boat, but manufacturing wise, it seems like a hard one just because of the shrinkages and getting stuff to line up and screw together. And
I'm going to disagree, with all due respect.
Okay.
I'm going to say the problem they're going to face is that I don't want my river running boat to have the same hull as my creek boat. I think you're going to get mediocre versions of both of those boats rather than one good one, which isn't a good solution.
Okay.
Come on, weigh in on that.
Lewis, have you seen this boat out there anywhere?
Like you wouldn't like if you were to design a creek boat from scratch, you just wouldn't slap a brap hull on that thing and call it done.
No.
Okay, you answered my question. Thank you. What do you guys think, Lewis? I mean, come on, you're a discerning paddler. What do you think of the idea? Do I have it all wrong?
I'm skeptical.
Grace?
Skeptical at best.
Yeah.
Yeah. My thing with all of these slicey stern boats is I really think they start paddling weird when the volume distribution gets too out of balance. Like if the bow is too much bigger than the stern. And if you have the size bow that you want on a creek boat with a stern that you can do a pivot turn on, it's going to paddle shitty. Like every time you put it on edge, the stern's going to drop and the bow's going to come up whether you want it to or not. And like you're going to be landing flat off a spirit. The boat's going to do weird things when you just go to do a peel out. It's just going to be weird unless you just want to paddle with the boat flat all the time.
Dude, I think it's a jump the shark moment.
Dude.
I'm telling you,
I could say
you
could look at like dry suits, for instance, right? And like Kokatat had that full circular zip dry suit, that comes apart. And I think the first take on it from some paddlers maybe like it's an innovative thing or it's something amazing, but we've all thought of that, right? And we've all dismissed it as for one reason or another, right? And then Pete came out with the dry suit with the zipper up the crotch, right? Once again, it wasn't that innovative. I mean, you don't have to be Da Vinci to come up with that idea, right? We all dismissed it. And I'm wondering if like this modular boat thing. I mean, I remember the Transformer was kind of a similar take on this situation. I mean, is this an idea that you guys have had in the past and written off as maybe something that doesn't work for y'all?
Yeah, I mean, we did a pod Woody and I did a pod on a boat back at Perception and proceeded to rip it off immediately. Even on just the green, not that much volume of water, just the inserts and the on or
okay, there we
me?
go. Yeah,
that's you.
That one's you.
That was you. Okay. So you were on the green with Woody.
Yeah. It was actually a predecessor to the Fat, I guess it would have been, and we had pod ideas that we were putting on the back, and we were screwing them down onto the deck and all that kind of stuff, and we, blew the pod off when we penciled in at Groove Tube. It popped right off the boat, and so it just, for a lot of effort, it was sketchy. Be the way to say.
I mean, to be fair, none of us have paddled the Steez, so
Yeah.
You have to give it the benefit of the doubt.
And that's where I'm coming from. I like it when people try stuff. I think it's cool.
Right.
Try stuff.
I mean, I think it could be
I'm
cool.
skeptical as well, but I think it's awesome they're giving it a shot.
Who isn't skeptical of new ideas?
I feel like what's going to happen is you're going to get that boat and you're going to find that you're either going to paddle it with the pod on 90% of the time or with the pod off 90% of the time. And the changeability function is going to be questionable.
Yeah. Who knows?
Is there
All right,
is,
so what's...
is there one
Go ahead,
in the
Grace.
States? Is there one in the States? Does one exist, or is it just a picture? Does anybody know that?
I saw I saw that picture from Europe. Alpine Action had a photo up that I saw, and it looked like a real boat. I don't know.
Okay.
So to wrap up in the plastic conversation, generally speaking, the plastics in boats breaking more often than they used to. That's not supported by any facts or data.
No, that's total garbage.
Right. All right.
When are we?
That's what I think. That it's hard for people to see it that haven't been around for a really long time. Is the number of people paddling really hard whitewater is.
That's right.
It's exponential.
That's right.
It's totally different. I went out and paddled the green
Yeah.
a couple weekends ago at 24 inches, 30 degrees, and there were 40 people out there.
Yeah.
That never, ever, ever, ever happened 10 years ago.
And the thing is,
And like
and
six
I think
of them. Go ahead.
that's exciting, and it's great because as a manufacturer, I like selling expensive gear to people who paddle often, right? Who need the gear. The problem is there's such downward pressure on prices, right?
Yeah.
Customers are like, I can't spend $1,800 on a kayak. They're like, well, honestly, maybe you should be spending $1,800 on a kayak because you're doing really demanding things. I'm looking at getting like a backcountry ski setup, and it's going to cost $1,800 at least.
Yeah.
Or more, north of $2,000, right?
Yeah. By the way, did I mention how hard plastic welding is? It's really hard.
Like no one should try it. That's not something you're supposed to do. You should get a new boat, is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Understand.
Shane, do you guys still do a hull program?
Yeah. Same program we've done. Yeah, pretty much. And and basically, if you break it in the first year, in general, unless you're doing a Ryan McAvoy directly on the rocks from 40 feet, you're going to get a haul, and then the price escalates from there, over the next couple of hauls. It's kind of how we work it. Obi's got a total program. He kind of knows everybody, and he's dealt with this a little while.
Do you guys live in fear of someone like Piranha coming out with the next hottest material for boats? Is that something that you're concerned about, or are you guys, is the community tight enough and the science tight enough that you're all going to arrive at this sort of thing at the same time?
Well, unless it's unless they figure it out and they're able to, get the rights to it, and most of the time, I think a plastic manufacturer is not going to let somebody keep the rights for more than a year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's in the back of your mind, but it's been so long since something new has come along. It's not very, we're not, sitting around awake at night, worrying about it.
That's what I want to know is when we're moving on from polyethylene. Like,
yeah.
No time soon, it sounds like.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors. One is we've got, $500,000 in machinery back there that runs a certain way, runs a certain thing, runs certain molds. We're bought in that way, but also, truthfully, there isn't a better material right now, for doing this. Just the durability, the cost effectiveness, it's just real in a lot of different ways, manufacturing all the way to the actual activity.
It is amazing the beating that a kayak can take.
It's amazing.
It is an amazing beating.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone in the outdoor industry realizes how difficult it is to manufacture kayaking gear, from the paddle to the boat to the spray skirt to the dry suit, and how few people do it and how brutally cheap they are.
It's incredible.
It is incredible.
It's like if
the mantra.
Skiers had to make ski companies had to make skis for skiing like scree fields,
right?
So tariffs. You guys are having a hard time getting boats into Europe, right?
Yeah.
Made in the USA.
Correct.
Right? We make our gear in Vietnam, no problem.
Yeah.
That's MAGA, baby.
So what are you doing to get around that? Are they just charging extra, or you got a system lined up, or?
Yeah, it's all of that stuff combined. Some people are not bringing boats in, and some people are, working a way around it. And even just like, how cars happen here, they ship in a chassis and they bring in a body and they put it together there. We're doing a little bit of that kind of stuff. It's a whole mixed bag. I mean, it's a mess, really.
Yeah. That's a mess. Yeah.
Well, finally here, Shane, is there anything new brewing? Anything we should be looking out for, or can you just not talk about anything?
The old line is, I'd tell you, but I'd have to kill you. But no, we're not. We are working on something. And it's in the works. Okay. Not imminent. Okay. But it's fun.
Well, shoot, since you're here, Shane, you just want to stick around for some rants and raves?
Sure. Let me think about that.
We're at an hour and 46 minutes here at the show. This is a marathon show. You guys are just going to go off to your lives here, and I'm going to have to fumble through editing this thing. But who'd like to kick us? This is everybody's favorite segment of the show. This is Rants and Raves. This is where your hosts go off on a little bit of a rant or a little bit of a rave about something they're loving or something that they're not so much loving. Who would like to start us off here? I'm going to rant about the road noise on somebody's... Who is that? Is that Weld? Is that your...
That's me.
All right. I'm going to rant about the dump truck we heard earlier that I'm going to have to edit out, the sirens that we just heard now, and some of the other things. So I'll lead off with that.
Nice. I would say I'm almost always a raver, but I'm going to rant as well. And my rant is going to be on people that don't look back when they get to the bottom of the rapid.
That recently happened to you?
One. Yeah.
And on our river on the green, it's very common to get going, do your thing, run your lines and keep going race style. But you need to look back. Everybody needs to look back when you get to the bottom of the rapid.
It's a good one.
Good one. You guys are so ill prepared on your rants.
No, I'm gonna rave, and this isn't about. I'm gonna try not. This is not about IR gear, but I'm gonna rave about wearing a pair of Capilene boxer shorts underneath your union suit, right? So that when you change at the river, right, in your dry suit, you can just drop the union suit completely off. You're not completely buck naked. You still have Capilene boxer shorts on.
No.
Sounds like a lot of layers.
Dude.
People in America need to get over their prudish attitude towards people changing in public.
That's
a little man ass isn't going to hurt you.
Hairy as it might be.
I'm going to rant about myself and my own stupid Amero-centric choice in the ultimate paddling vehicle conversation, because I picked the Toyota Tacoma when, of course, the obvious answer is the Helix. It's the Helix, right? It's like the diesel solid axle version of the Tacoma that you can get everywhere else in the world except for in the United States. And I foolishly constrained my thinking to the things that are available in this backwards, rapidly sinking country we live in.
It's America. That thing's way too small.
Sure.
I like that. No, I got a serious rave and a rant. So I'm gonna rave, and I think I've probably raved about this before, of how awesome the gear is. And it comes back to what Shane was talking about, how 40 people were just out on the river the other day, cold weather and whatever. The dry suit has made that possible in a big way, I think. So I'm going to rave about just how awesome the gear is, but then I'm going to rant about, well, you got to figure something out with all the stuff around your waist. We need less stuff around the waist. So we need to figure out a way to do that. And I know we've talked about the dry deck before and some other things, but somehow
it's a dry deck's dry suit.
Somehow we got to figure that out.
But the problem with that is then you have a $1,200 or $1,500 piece of gear that works really well for one type of boat.
I'm going to need that.
Or, better yet, boat manufacturers come up with two size rims.
Oh, God,
large
here we go.
And extra large. Done. Same size, industry standard. That would save consumers tons of money every year in spray skirts. We can make the skirt stronger, and they'd fit from one boat to the next. Right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Hammer Factor. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Shane. And,
Thank you,
You bet.
and we'll catch you next episode.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.